difference between what you do to escape and what we call a normal addiction is that escape plan that you use. People don't look down on that. I know I used to be a true workaholic because that kept my mind off of the bad things going on. And people thought that I was great and fantastic, but I was still hurting as bad as somebody who had crawled up inside of a bottle. And but folks don't equate that as having a problem. It's really adult of you to recognize that problem, that it is a bit of a problem, because most people don't. And so you work at it to be happy. But my thought on a no-win situation is like in golf or chess, you may not be able to go through the way that you intended to go through, but you can readjust what you're going to move. Just because the move you had planned doesn't work, you make a different move on the board. Or if you're on the golf course, if you will go around a trap instead of going through a trap. And that's what addiction is. It's a trap, and you're already sharp enough that you can see them. So you're off to a very good start.
Well,
Anybody
thanks.
else got thoughts on what Kate shared? I guess not. Then Zach's going to do reflection for us. Zach, come on down.
All right. That was really good, Kate.
Yes, it was.
So I'm doing reflection tonight, and Kate already read the step here, and we're working on powerlessness. And I'm doing the reflection here, and I always tell my story about this step that this step is really hard for me, and I think it's really hard to admit that you're powerless. I think some people think that we ought to be able to do something about our struggle or our addiction, and some people, I think, have this fear that if they say they're powerless, that they'll stop trying to stop using or do better. And the thing that I want to say before I get started tonight is the thought I had was, and this is somewhat controversial, but I'm not giving anybody an excuse to use. But what I encourage people to do is I don't want you to focus on the activity of not using. I encourage folks to put their energy into trying to think about what they're thinking about, and ask themselves, what are you trying to escape from, and what is it that you're running from, or because we're all using whatever it is that we're using for a reason. And so tonight we're talking about no-win situations, and Kate took all my questions, so if this isn't very good, it's all Kate's fault. So, and I can blame her. But when I was working on this, I had a thought of a conversation I had this week, and it's part of my recovery story. And so, sometimes our choices, sometimes we're out in the world and we're doing things, and we make unhealthy choices, and sometimes those choices are because of addiction, or because of we're having a bad mental health day. And something that Doug says pretty often that I think is pretty amazing is that we all have mental health. It's just some people we have it in different degrees and have it in different struggles, which is actually very true. I say something, if you you go see a therapist or psychiatrist, and if anybody was to go see one and be completely honest about everything they think and feel during the day or during the week, anybody would walk out with an addiction or with a diagnosis and or medicine probably. And if that person that you were talking to went next door to an office and was honest about everything they think and feel in a day or a week, they too would get a diagnosis and walk out with a prescription probably. So, you know, if you're someone who struggles with mental health, we have to stop looking at that like it's a deficiency or like we're damaged individuals, because everybody has something to a degree. And so we make choices in our addiction and or mental health, bad mental health day or whatever, and those choices have consequences. And sometimes those choices put us in no-win situations. And you know, I did that quite a bit. And the thing I thought I needed to share tonight is that you know, sometimes we don't like any of the options that are in front of us in our life. You know, we're trying to get our life together. We come into recovery, and or maybe we get saved and we come into the church, and you know, we want God to change our life and to save us from our bad choices. And a lot of times that is, we want him to save us from our consequences. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I've been there, done that. And, you know, and my experience has been that, you know, God did save me from a lot of my choices. But there's some things that God did not save me from. He just walked with me through them, you know, because I needed to learn some stuff. And he was with me. I didn't go through them alone. And that was, I was really grateful for that, but I still had to go through some of those things. And so the thing I want to say tonight is, you know, Doug has a saying. He says, you know, you got to play the cards that you have in your hand. You know, you got to play the cards that you've been dealt. And something else Doug says that he didn't say it all the time, and I didn't catch it for a while. And it's just as important as the first part as the second part. You know, Doug has a lot of really good Dougisms if you haven't figured that out yet, but you got to play the hand that you're dealt, and you don't get any new cards until you play the ones that you have. You know, and if I'm messing that up, Doug, you can clean it up. But that's so important, because sometimes we wait around for some new cards like we can trade them in. And the truth is, we don't get to trade any cards in. You got to play the cards in your hand before you get any new ones. And sometimes the cards in your hand or the things on the table in front of you that you had to choose from, it feels like all you have is bad cards, or bad or worse cards. And you don't want to play any of them. You know, they all suck. And you're in a no-win situation. And you know, but the truth is you have an opportunity before you. This is what I wanted to say tonight. You have an opportunity before you, and I want to encourage you not to miss it, because you may be in a situation where you don't get to go back. You don't get to go back and have a do-over. You know, so we have to learn to recognize those situations and make the best healthy choice we can. You know, sometimes the things in front of us, the cards we have, is we can play a card that we can live with that we don't like, and then we have another card that we just absolutely hate and that we just can't live with. And so we don't want to play any of them, because we don't want to have the consequences for any of it, but we're going to have some consequences because we made some choices. And so play the card that you can live with, because if you refuse to make any choice, you know, there are powers greater than yourself, and those powers tend to choose the things that you hate. And I've been the guy that refused to choose, and the powers that be, you know, locked me up and threw away the key. And so, and if I would have not been so stubborn and not been so angry and took advantage of my opportunity to choose, I could have chose something a lot less than what I got in the end. You know, and so if you know, we do a lot of things when we're surviving, you know, and those things have consequences sometimes, and we feel like we're in a no-win situation. And so, take a breath and recognize where you are, and try to make the best choice that you can live with. The other question here that Kate didn't use that I was going to talk about was, what do I try to do, or what do I try to escape from? What do I feel trapped by? And we can feel trapped by a lot of that stuff. We can feel trapped by those choices and those consequences that we make. The other one here is that she read is what feelings do I experience as I acknowledge people in my life who do have power, such as power, I'm going to say over me, such as supervisors, spouses, religious leaders, and sponsors. You can feel trapped by that stuff, and when you go from living a life on the street and things like that and running and doing that thing, and then you try to live life on life's terms and you get a job and you start paying bills and you start doing that stuff, they can feel very trapped. You can feel very trapped by that. You feel like you have a loss of freedom. You spent the last several years not taking anything from anybody, and now you have this boss and you feel like he's never had a hard day in his life, and he's, maybe he's boss's son or whatever, and he's just giving you crap all day long, and you gotta kiss his rear. You feel like he wants you to kiss his rear and whatever. And you need the job because you got to pay the bills, or maybe you got fines, or just whatever it is. And that can make you feel very, very trapped, or you got a PO breathing down your neck. And if you lose this job, they've told you that they're going to revoke you or something, and so you can feel very trapped by those situations. And, maybe it could be any combination of that stuff. And so, a lot of our addiction, escape is a big word to me. It's a lot of our addiction is about escaping. And, I think that's something that we should all ask ourselves is, why are we checking out? Why are we disappearing? What are we escaping from? Why did I stay high for so long? Why did I not want to be present? Why did I want to numb out and not feel anything? And that's all versions of escape. And so I guess that's what I have for tonight. Think about what you're thinking about, and if you don't know why you are using or why you were using, sobriety, recovery and sobriety are two very different things. And so recovery will give you long-lasting sobriety. Recovery is about healing all the stuff you went through that made you want to numb out and use whatever it is that you use. And we got to recover from all that trauma. And, you can have some sobriety through willpower. You can have some decent time in. I've known people that do pretty well with that. And, but there's always a relapse waiting to happen for those folks. And so, so I just want to encourage you to focus on your recovery. Don't put your energy into not using. It's not in the permission to use. Not that I could give that anyway, but put your energy into why you're using. Why are you escaping? Why are you numbing out? And focus on healing, recovering from whatever that is, and then you'll get sobriety. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Zach. Anybody have any questions or comments for Zach? I had a couple of thoughts. I grew up with the attitude that I always had to be right and I always had to win. And it took me a long time to figure out reality is we're not in control of anything. So if we try so hard to control it and then we fail, because we will fail, then that causes us to want to go run away and hide and find some other way to have peace. But you don't have to be in control. It's okay to not win every time. When I realized that, I had such a great peace about me. And you need to be able to look at what the possible outcomes of what's going on, and can you live with that? Can you have peace with the outcome if you don't get your way? And the truth is, you can. You may not like it, but you can have peace with it. And if you reach that point and you look at that higher power and know that he is in control, then you can have peace with just about anything. But it takes a little while and a little work to get there. But once you finally get there in life, it's so much sweeter, and you get to be around for life instead of hiding somewhere or another. Anybody else got anything? Then we'll move on to Doug time. Doug, come on down.
All right, thank you, Paul. I know Paul's just asked everyone, but Alicia, John, Lisa, Kate, you have any comments you'd like to make at this time before? Nothing from John?
Yeah.
Nothing from Kate. And Kate, all right,
Can
Alicia,
you
you
guys hear
have
me?
something? You have something you'd like to say?
Yeah. I can totally relate with the control thing. As far as relate.
Oh,
Alicia, we're
Because of like the amount.
we've dropped your dropped your picture and we can't hear you. There, now we can hear you laugh.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I said that I can relate with the control and not having any and trying to control everything, admitting and acknowledging any of those things, because to, like, even ask anybody for any help, or just being afraid and living in fear, and of how people might respond to me because of the lack of trust that I have for any human being, or trusting that there was a God, and hoping like hell that that what he could possibly do for me that I could not do for myself, and handing each and every issue over to him, believing that he was gonna make it right, or do for me what I can do for myself. And then I started receiving this grace in each and every area, relationships, getting along with people, and to have those things, and to know that I don't have to live in fear me in every area of my life and every issue, and to overcome, it's the little things, that made me want to use. It's not the big things, just letting go of, surrendering, letting go with the drugs, letting go of the bad relationships, the, just the tools, the things were, not knowing,
Alicia,
like what you guys were saying, that
we're
I needed.
you're not, I don't know if you can even hear me, but you're frozen, and we hear a few words there, so I'm sorry about that.
It's
anyway, and so, sorry about that, Alicia.
Okay.
All right, so I will, there was nobody else that wanted to say anything. Okay, all right. And so I have to apologize to Kate. We were having some more technical problems and I was off to the side there trying to figure it out. Evidently, well, not going to go into it, but hopefully we're not all the way there yet, but we are better than we were. So anyway, I'm back, and Kate, I'm sorry I missed your. I tried to listen to it, but I was multitasking, and so.
That's okay. It's all good.
So I may say some of the same things you said. So don't get mad at me, okay? Don't beat up
You're
on me.
fine.
So and so anyway, we're talking about step one tonight. It is the first of the month, as Paul said earlier, and that and I think Kate also mentioned that. And it's we admit that that we are powerless over our problems, and that is a big step. And we're talking about a no-win situation, a double bind situation. As we've talked about here at Saturday Night Live, that Dr. Stephen Covey talks about, a lose-lose situation. In other words, there's no way to win. It's all lose, and that's not a good situation. And we need to tonight is to help us to recognize that you may be stuck in a lose-lose situation or a no-win situation. We'll talk a little bit about that. You can't fix something that you can't identify, okay? And so we have to recognize that we're powerless. We're not able to deal with our situation because it has all the power. Not that we are totally without any power, but over this problem, we don't have any power over it or would have been able to fix it. And that our life has become unmanageable. And so step one here is try to help us to just recognize the problem. Now, I have a little bit of a problem just telling you to recognize you have a problem without maybe giving you some solutions. So I want you to recognize the problem because that's a really big step, like Zach was talking about. Okay, we got to recognize that we're dealt these cards. Just holding on to them doesn't make anything happen. We're stuck. We're sunk if we don't go ahead and participate. If we don't take some action, and we're going to be talking about that here in a moment. So to solve any problem, any doctor to try to help someone to be able to prescribe medication, they have to first diagnose. And so we have to first diagnose so that we can prescribe so that we can get better. And that's what some of step one is about. And I hope that's not too abstract. So we're talking tonight out of our step guide and out of the Life Recovery Bible, the no-win situation. And this is out of Genesis 16, 1 through 15. And I think Zach touched on it, but we may be stuck in a situation and we feel powerless. Okay, he mentioned jobs, relationships. But the statement here: we may be in a situation that there are people over us. Of course, we're all in situations that people are over us. Okay, and so we have some of those dynamics all the time. It's how we deal with them. Okay, and so we're all in situations, and so we feel trapped, and we feel these demands sometimes that if I make these people happy, I'm going to make these people unhappy, and that's how we feel. And sometimes that's true, Sometimes that's not true. Sometimes it's just how we think, okay? And because we have narrowed our focus and we're stuck with going back to the analogy that Zach gave, we're stuck with those cards and we say, that's all we have. We're not stuck with what we have. In the analogy he said, you play them and you get some more, okay? In life, you make a move, okay? You do something, you take action, all right? And we'll talk more about that just a little bit here in a moment. But when we get into these double bind situations, we get frustrated, and as Alicia was talking about, was about control. We look for a measure of control. We want to try to grab some kind of control because we feel out of control, and when we're out of control, we want to escape, and we have these escape hatches in our life that are to help us to escape the situation. And some of them are drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, anger, violence, shopping, spending, cutting, checking out, disappearing, overreacting, exploding. We have these different escape hatches that we go into to try to give us some kind of control, but it's a form of almost sabotaging our life to get some of those type of controls. Actually, it's not. It is sabotaging our life. And oftentimes these are what we're escaping through these addictive behaviors. And oftentimes there are times that we're not even aware that we have slipped over the edge and gone into these behaviors. It's just automatic. And that's where we have to wake up, because when we do that, we start sliding away from where we really want to be, who we really are. And then we start acting like things or people that we really don't want to be, but that's what we do. Does any of that make sense? Hopefully it does. And so and the story that the Bible used here was Hagar, and she was in a powerless situation. And I'm just going to touch on the story real quickly, and that was out of Genesis 16, 1 through 15. Hagar was a slave. Okay, right there tells you that she was powerless. She was a servant. She was a slave. And her mistress was Sarai, or when we call her Sarah now. And that Sarah was promised a child, and she hadn't been able to have a child, so she was angry and frustrated. And to make a long story short, she may have been the first creator of having a surrogate mother, having a surrogate come in to deliver a child. So what she did, she gave her servant, her handmaiden, to her husband, so that he could produce a child, which would get her a child in far as their customs were. And nowadays, legally, you could do the same thing because it happens other than they do it in artificial insemination. So here she got pregnant. And then when she got pregnant, her attitude changed, and she started treating her boss with contempt. And Sarah got jealous, which was her master, and got angry and got frustrated because, well, number one, she wasn't able to have a child. Number two, her servant now is pregnant and having a child. Number three, she's treating her servant is treating her badly. And so she went and complained to Abraham and said, hey, I got a problem, so you got a problem. He says, keep me out of it. It's your servant, you deal with it. And so she started beating her. because she was showing her contempt, or she was having a bad attitude. Let's put it that way. I mean, hey, she was feeling pretty good about herself. So to make a long story short, Hagar, the pregnant girl, took off. She ran away. And that was, and oftentimes when we have problems, we look for ways of escape. And so what she did was what a lot of us do, was she took off with no plans, with no preparation. And she just took off and headed into the desert. And basically, you know, she didn't know where she was going, and she would have basically died, except the angel of the Lord came to her, showed her where some water was, and God spoke to her, said, I see you, you're important, you know, and what you need to do is, you're in this double bind, you're in this no-win situation. What you need to do is go back, change your attitude, okay? Not just go back, but change your attitude. Don't just act like you're okay with the situation, but just be okay with the situation. And that's hard. That's hard. That's hard. That's hard. But the fact of it was, he said, you have a promise from me to have a great nation that comes out of this child. But the rest of the story is, if she doesn't stay alive, if she doesn't go back, okay, and if she doesn't change her attitude and raise that child, it's not going to happen. And so she did. She went back, okay? And so a lot of us know that same story. And so she returned, and when we get into these no-win situations, and we all get into no-win situations, we feel trapped, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We feel trapped, excuse me. And we are tempted to run away through our addictive or compulsive escape hatches, right? And it's usually we go from a bad situation and we normally then make it worse. Yes, yes, yes. Do you hear me out there? We all really know that, don't we? We all know that. And so what do we do? What do we do when we're in these situations? And it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. Did I mention it's hard? It is hard. Okay. But this is the way that it is. We have to be willing to turn to God instead of run from the situation and run from God, run from what's going on, run from the hard thing, because we have to deal with the issue to change our life. Well, we can postpone it by escaping, and sometimes we can live through it. Not always, but sometimes. But it never resolves the situation. We still have the same problem. Does that make sense? And so what we're talking about here is, so at this time we have to be willing to yield ourselves, like Haggai did, go back and submit, like Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane, like we all have done, finally come to the place where, okay, I'm going to do that. I know there's been times in my life that I would have preferred to run or fight, but my personal instructions that I felt like I got from the Holy Spirit was stand and stand therefore. And that oftentimes is the hardest thing, because you can't just stand there. You have to have a proper attitude. Hello. And that's really what growing up and maturing and having recovery is all about. Okay. And maybe I've gone too far past step one here, but it is really some of the solution. And so what we have to do is we need to seek God instead of whine and complain and fight and beat up on stuff and tear stuff up and shoot ourselves up and drink ourselves into stupors or whatever it is we do to try to escape. Because after we get done escaping, we're still going to come back to the same place, and we're going to have to play the cards that have been dealt us. And that's so hard. And I'm sorry, but it's still the truth. It's the way it is in my life, and it's the way it's been in your life. And so, and when Hagar got out in the desert and she finally realized she's going to die, she finally opened up and sought God. I mean, she could have sought God before she took off, right? Maybe she kind of did, but she didn't really, because she was mad. Okay. She was being mistreated. Yes, I understand. All right. But the fact of it was, she didn't really do that until after she had put herself in an extreme place of danger. Do you know what I'm talking about? Hello. Okay. So if you put yourself in an extreme place of danger, what you have to do is you have to talk to God, and you have to speak to him. You have to start to work on what's going on inside here. Because if you don't start healing on the inside, you're going to continually be sucked into those escape hatches. Because the pain is so great. And he hears you. He does hear you. And he listens to you. And when you give him a chance, he has and will direct us. Then we have to take action. And it's not easy, but it's life. It's freedom. It's peace. It's recovery. And I know I'm preaching a little bit here, but it's so important. And there's no easy way, and I'm sorry. It's hard. But healing is painful, and recovery is possible. But we can only do it by making that move to receive that healing, that forgiveness, where we forgive ourselves and forgive others and come to peace and stop fighting and heal that inward hurts, and then avoid the escape hatches. Stop telling ourselves, well, I tell you what, God's going to reject me because I'm so bad, and I know he's going to reject me, so I'm just going to reject myself first, and I'm just going to punish myself. God don't want you punishing you. He doesn't want you punishing you. The punishment has been paid for. The price, the measure has already been offered for you. All you have to do is accept it. All you have to do is be willing to accept it and allow that healing to start. I know it's hard. It's hard to forgive yourself, but that's a card that we have to play. We have to make that connection. And he hears us, and he will give us hope. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. It means we have to be willing to stop sabotaging ourselves, stop polluting ourselves, stop torturing ourselves, stop wrecking our lives, because and I know the reason, whether you realize it or not, I know why you do that. It's because you think that you deserve to be punished, so you're punishing yourself. But that's not from God. You even blame God when you do it to yourself. He says, well, it's his fault. It's not. You're doing it to yourself. He didn't want you to do that. You don't have to believe me. Give him a chance to tell you, and he will. And so what we, instead of rejecting ourselves because we're afraid we're going to be rejected, I know that, I've lived that, I've been there, done that, okay? And it's hard to turn that around because we get so set on beating and tearing ourselves apart. We have to stop it. We have to stop punishing ourselves. We have to stop, listen, tell God, he knows it, get it out. And after we really get it out to him, then things will start to clear. The pressure will be less on the inside, and then you can start to hear. And when you hear, then you can start to heal. And when you start to heal, then you can start to do some things to help yourself. We are the one that has to choose, okay? It's not God's choice. He already made the choice. He has chosen us. He has chosen you, whether you realize it or not. I don't care what anybody else has told you. If they've told you differently than that, I'm going to be so bold to say they don't understand, okay? Right? They may be coming from a legalistic a viewpoint, but they don't understand the grace of God and the love of God. If they're judging you. Scripture says there is therefore now no condemnation to those that are in Christ Jesus. If you've accepted Christ Jesus, well, I accepted him, but I've done so much, I've messed up. If you accepted him, he embraced you. And he still has a hold of you. How do I know that? Is because you're here, you're listening to me. He's touched you. He's been with you even in the middle of your worst mess. So oftentimes we ask the wrong question when we're in that double bind, okay? We say, well, I want to solve this, and I know the problem is because I'm bad. That's not the answer, and that's the wrong question. Question is, how do I line myself up with him and receive his grace? And how you do that is by receiving his grace, by saying yes. It's not by what you do, it's by just faith. Okay? Faith doesn't save us, grace saves us. Faith just flips the switch. And it is just by saying yes. Yes is the switch. Okay, I surrender. Yes, I'm connected. And grace is there. Do you deserve it? I don't deserve it. You don't deserve it, but he gave it to us anyway. And that's great. Why? Because he loves you. He loves me. Even me. He loves even me. Einstein said this. He said, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness or mindset or thinking. Where am I at? That created it. So you can't solve a problem with the same level of mindset. So if we're stuck on this no-win situation and we only see those things, then we're stuck. We have to back up. We have to come into the observer position and say, wait a minute, there's more here than just this no-win situation. He loves me. He forgives me. No matter what, I am covered by his grace, not because of what I've done or didn't do. I'm covered because he has forgiven me, and I receive that because I know that he is. And when we do that, he goes to work in our life. Isn't that great? I want to give you a double bind story because when I was doing some research, I come up with this story and I thought it was pretty neat. It's called a Zen, Z-E-N story. And the Zen master said to his pupils, he says, if you say if you say this stick is real, I will beat you. If you say this stick is not real, I will beat you. If you say nothing, I will beat you. Now that is a no-win situation right there, right? And if we stay locked in on that right there, it looks like there's no possibility of winning in this situation. But one student, however, found a solution, okay, because he was thinking with a different mind, okay? He wasn't locked in to just those 3 cards that were there, okay? One student, however, found a different solution by changing the level of communication. He walked up to the teacher, grabbed the stick, and broke it. So what he did was, you've heard this statement before, this student went outside the box. A while ago, I said, step back from your thoughts and go into the observer position and see things from outside, gain a bigger perspective of what's going on with the chaos in your life. And there are more possibilities than we could ever think. There's just not one choice or just 3 choices. There are multiple choices. Oftentimes when I'm in a situation with people, and I use this all the time, and you've heard me say this, but when people tell me that we can't do whatever it is that I'm needing to do, and I say, now wait a minute, can you take a second and think with me? And I said, think creatively. How can we resolve this? Think creatively. You can do that, right? I'll say that. I'll kind of joke with them because I want them to back up because they're stuck in what they're thinking, what maybe their particular narrow rules that they got to live by or function by. And there's not been a time that a solution didn't come up somehow. We found a way, whether it was they come up with it or I come up with it or somehow a joint solution came up. It always has happened. Okay, that's trying to get a different perspective. That's some of what Zach was talking about earlier. And so what we have to do is we have to be willing to when we're in these when we feel, keyword feel, when we feel we're in those no-win situations, because sometimes we can get into them, right? But just because I feel like I'm stuck and I'm in a no-win situation doesn't mean that you have to buy into that. Okay. Right? You can back up, you can look. There are other possibilities. You can make other choices. Max Planck, which was a physicist, a Nobel Prize winner, and he said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Dr. Wayne Dyer said it very similar. He says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So when you change how you look at it, when you gain that other perspective, that observer perspective, when you put distance between your thoughts and yourself, and I know that may sound strange, and I know that sounds strange to me when I learned this many years ago, but it's really a fact that you can back up and move into that place, which I think is that super consciousness or the Holy Spirit to help us to gain that perspective. It's such a tool right there that you can use. And so another quote that I really like is one from Gandhi. It says, "You must be the change you wish to see in the world." You say, I'm waiting for the world to change. I'm waiting for my cards to change. No, we have to change. And that leads me up to what Viktor Frankl said, which I like a lot. And he says, when you are no longer able to change a situation, you are challenged to change yourself. That's big. That's big. And he came to that conclusion, from what I understand, in the German Nazi death camps in World War II. And what he was stuck in a situation that he couldn't change his situation, but he changed himself. And he went on to say that he felt more free than his captors. He woke up every morning with the odds, I think it was like 1 to 17, that he was going to die that day, because he knew that his odds in dying every day, he was 1 in 17. But yet he engaged. Now that's pretty tough stuff. Okay. But he did it. And something else that Einstein said, and I'm winding down here, and he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. And that's pretty big if you stop and think about it. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Now we think that knowledge, and Einstein said this, that we think that knowledge is supreme. But he said imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited, whereas imagination is not. And that's that gaining that perspective, that visual that we did earlier on breathing, where I said breathe through your heart. Some people say, well, I can't do that. Well, you can see yourself doing all kinds of things. Why can't you see yourself breathing through your heart space? Right? One of the reasons why you can is because you say you can't, or you're just unwilling to even try. So and my final quote here, I've got this on I got a stone that has this on my desk, and some of you that's been in my office, I'm gonna daub my nose here, but that's been in my office may have seen this, and this is from Einstein also, and it says, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Okay, that's hard to see, but the fact of it is, when we're in that situation, that you have, it's an opportunity to grow, it's opportunity to see new things, that you have an opportunity to develop. Normally, not always, but oftentimes, our problems are there because of our own stuff that had brought those problems, or drawn those problems into our life, because we need to resolve them and work through them and grow through them. And Einstein said that in the middle of these difficulties or problems lie opportunities. So what do you think about that? Too much?
No, really good stuff, Doug.
So that's what Doug's got to say. Any comments from anybody?
Your talking made me think of so many things that I've done in my life with the idea of thinking I had self-control or being in control. And one of the funniest and stupidest things that I've done is I always used to like to keep my checkbook balance to the penny. And when Brenda and I got together, I was doing the checkbook and I was 3 cents off. And so I went through all the receipts and all the checks and all the auto pay bills and checked everything off for the month. And I was 3 cents off. And after pre-checking things a few times, she looked at me and said, here, I'll give you 3 cents. Don't worry about it. And from that point, she took control of the checkbook. And I don't have to struggle about 3 cents because it's not that important. But for me at that time, I had to be in control, and it stressed me. And we really don't have to be in control of everything. We can go another route on just about every situation if it's provided. And I thank her for providing another route, because I haven't worried about the checkbook since.
Well, see, and oftentimes we create these beliefs that there's something wrong with me if this isn't perfect, okay? And I've got to make it by controlling. I have to make it be this, or I'm bad. And that comes right out of our own head. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so we don't have to be that way. And we can think differently. And that's because you had yourself in a double bind situation, and you were just torturing yourself, and you were having a really great time at it.
It had to be perfect or I was not happy. That's stupid. 3 cents.
Any other comments from anybody? I had a thought when you were sharing, and I had a lot of thoughts when you were sharing, but one is the rules that we hem ourselves in by, and it's like, it has to be the way that it is. And you were saying, take a step back and think outside the box. And I can remember a lot of times in my life when just a lot of different stories where I felt like I had to, I couldn't let offenses go and I had to answer them, and those are the rules I lived by, even if those rules meant that I would get arrested and incarcerated, and I remember one time, the thing that I thought about the most, I guess I'll share it real quick, was I was in between jobs and I got a title loan on a car, and which, don't ever do that. It's a racket. They're designed so you never can pay them back. You got to pay them back all in one lump sum, and they're designed to make payments on. And if you don't pay it back all in one lump sum, you're never going to get it done. I had paid the amount back like 7 times, but I never could pay it back all in one lump sum, so I never could get out from underneath it. But I had paid it. I had paid the loan back like 7 times over, but I never could get out from underneath it. And I think I owed like $100 or something, but I never could get it caught up. And long story short, they repoed my car, and I got a ride down. To the loan company, and I scared them so bad that they gave me the address of the repo man, and they just wanted me out of there. And that they don't do that. That's kind of against the law. They were worried that I was going to hurt them if I didn't get the address. So they gave me the address, and they proved to me it was the right place so I'd leave. And I left before the cops got there, and I got a ride down to the repo guy, and I told my buddy to leave. And I remember standing in the guy's driveway, and it was dark, and he was inside standing behind his door with a gun. He showed me the gun, and I was pacing, and he and I were having a conversation through the door, and he was on the phone with the police, and he had a gun, and he was telling me he was going to shoot me, and I was telling him I was still going to get him. And he told me the cops were on the way, and I said they won't be here in time. And I was pacing back and forth. I was arguing with him and arguing with God and arguing with myself at the same time. And my son, he's fixing to be 21, but he was just born, and I remember arguing with myself because the old me that was something I couldn't let go. And I lived that way for a very long time. That was a big offense, and I couldn't let that go, or I was a big punk, and I know the consequences were, but I still couldn't let that go. And I had to do something. I had to answer that, and And I've been in those situations before, knowing guns don't bother me, and you know, and I was more than confident that I could get done what I wanted to get done. And but I remember at one point I stopped pacing, and I told him, you know, through the door, I was about, you know, 15 feet from the door. And I told him, I said, you know, you're lucky that I want to be with my son more than I want to right the wrong, you know. And that probably made no sense to him, and I probably sound like a crazy person, but my point is that it's so easy for us to wall ourselves in with, you know, these rules and these beliefs and these vows that we unknowingly make to ourselves of how we have to live, and if we don't, then it means something about us. And we, you know, we have to mature, and we have to grow up, and we have to live outside those boxes we put ourselves in. And I've had lots of situations like that in my life where, you know, the more you choose to let yourself out of those, you know, those self-imposed little prisons, if you will, you know, there's freedom there, you know. And it's scary because you don't know who you are on the side of that, because, you know, for me, I thought my rules kept me safe, and my rules, you know, they told me who I was. That really wasn't the case, but I don't know, it's just what I thought of, you know. So just because you've lived a certain way for so long, or you feel like you have to do something because that's just what you do, that's not necessarily the case. And so I don't know, I hope that makes sense. So.
Well, that's quite a story there, Zach. But I'd say a lot of us have stories similar to that, and maybe not to that extent, but we've all been pushed around by our own things we said in our head. I know that I have. You reminded me of some while you were talking, but I'm not going to go into them tonight. But anyway, the point I'm going to kind of sum up what I think your point here is that sometimes we put ourselves in these double bind situation, these rules, okay, that that we somehow adopted to try to help us in our life, and those same rules then come back and they try to run our life, and they actually will destroy our life, because maybe, and not all the time, but maybe there was some reason why some of those things had to be there at one time. But the fact of it is, life changed, and you were the guy that got the rules, wasn't the guy that was trying to live the rules, because you were in a different. You were different. You were different, and the person you were trying to be was different. And my point here that I want to make in recovery is that oftentimes when we come into recovery, we're still trying to live by the old rules, but we're trying to live a new life. And that goes right to what Einstein was saying here is you can't solve this problem by living by the old rules. You have to have a different mindset. You have to let some of that stuff go. If not, all of it. Would you agree with that, Zach?
Yeah, totally. Your old rules will destroy your new life. You know, you've got to, and no one tells you that, you know, and that's, you gotta realize that your old rules of surviving will destroy your new life, you know, and you've got to change them, you know, so.
All right, any other comments from anybody before we go back to Mr. MC? All right, well, we'll go back to you, Paul. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Appreciate everyone for listening. Hopefully this was helpful and that hopefully it's giving you something to think about, because all we want to do is help. We're not here to try to control or make you be us. We want you to be you, but we want you to be a free and productive, healthy and happy you. So we want the best for you. So make healthy choices, right? Going to you, Paul.
Well, okay. My lines that I would say. Really glad y'all are here. I hope that we were able to give you a little bit of good information. And like Doug said, make healthy choices. We want life to be good for everyone. And if you need to get hold of us somehow or another, get hold of somebody to talk to, and we'll see if we can help you out on a one-to-one.